To conclude my bachelor degree in interpreting and translation, I decided to talk about linguistic relativity, how color words shape our perception. So today I'll be talking about language and about how language can shape the way we think. So I'll be speaking to you using language, one of these magical abilities that we humans have. We can transmit really complicated thoughts to one another. Therefore, what I'm doing right now is I'm making sounds with my mouth, I'm making tones and hisses and puffs, and those are creating air vibrations in the air. Those air vibrations are traveling to you, they're hitting your eardrums, and then the brain takes those vibrations from your eardrums and transforms them into thoughts. So because of this ability, we humans are able to transmit our ideas across vast reaches of space and time. We are able to transmit knowledge across minds. I can put a bizarre new idea in your mind right now. I could say, imagine a jellyfish dancing in a library while thinking about quantum mechanics. You probably haven't had that thought before, but now I've just made you think it through language, and that is its great power. Of course, there isn't just one language in the world. There are about 7,000 languages spoken around the world. And all the languages differ from one another in the kinds of things they oblige their speakers to express, just in order to be able to speak the language grammatically. Some languages have different sounds, they have different vocabularies, and they also have different structures. For example, some languages like English require tense on verbs, but some languages don't, and the same verb can be used for past, present, and future actions, like in Chinese. Some languages, in addition to tense, require gender on nouns. For example, if I say in English, I spent yesterday evening with a neighbor, you may well wonder whether my companion was male or female, but if we are speaking in French or in Italian, I don't have the privilege to equivocate, because I am obliged by the language to choose between voisin or voisine, between vicino or vicina. These languages, in fact, compel the speaker to inform the other person about the sex of my companion. Obviously, this doesn't mean that English speakers don't understand the differences between evenings spent with male or female neighbors. It only means that each time the word neighbor is mentioned, they are not obliged to specify the sex, while speakers of some languages are. That begs the question, does the language we speak shape the way we think? This is an ancient question. People have been speculating about this question for forever. Charlemagne, Holy Roman Emperor, said, "To have a second language is to have a second soul." Strong statement that language crafts reality. But on the other hand, Shakespeare has Juliet say, "What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." That suggests that maybe language doesn't craft reality. These arguments have gone back and forth for thousands of years, but until recently there hasn't been any data to help us decide either way. Recently, many scholars, cognitive scientists, and psychologists started doing research, and now we have actual scientific data to answer this question. So let me tell you about one of my favorite examples about that, entering into the realm of colors. Even if it seems almost impossible that rainbow colors are not seen in the same way throughout the world, that there might be more or fewer colors than we think, or that some cultures do not even give a name for colors, some experiments have demonstrated that languages also differ in how they divide the color spectrum, the visual world. Some languages have lots of words for colors, some have only a couple of words, like light and dark. For example, Russian has two distinct color names for the range that English subsumes under the name blue: Sini, dark blue, and Goluboy, light blue. Therefore, Russians have this lifetime of experience in language distinguishing these two colors. And when we test people's ability to perceptually discriminate these colors, what we find is that Russian speakers are faster across these linguistic boundaries. They are faster to be able to tell the difference between a light and a dark blue. And when you look at people's brain as they are looking at colors, the brains of people who use different words for light and dark blue will give a surprise reaction as the color shifts from light to dark, recognizing that something has categorically changed. Whereas the brain of English speakers, for example, that don't make this distinction, don't give that surprise, because nothing is categorically changing. This is the first direct evidence of the influence of language on visual perception. So what that suggests is that our perception of color is not only related to the colors we see, but to the words that we give colors. This is what we call linguistic relativity. This is just an example through which we can see how language can profoundly shape the way we think. But there are also many other examples showing that language can also have big impacts on space and time. There are people who can lay out space and time in completely different frames from each other, like in Hopi language, spoken in the northeastern Arizona. There are also people who don't have words for numbers and don't even know all the world of mathematics. Other areas have also been studied in recent years. One example is the marking of plurality. While English requires its speakers to mark the difference between singular and plural whenever a noun is mentioned, there are languages that do not regularly force such a distinction. It has been suggested that the necessity, or otherwise, to mark plurality affects the attention and memory patterns of speakers, but while this suggestion does not seem implausible in theory, not enough reliable evidence has yet been presented to support them. The example of colors seems to be the area where the impact of language has been demonstrated most convincingly so far. Now, the beauty of linguistic diversity is that it reveals to us just how ingenious and how flexible the human mind is. Human minds have invented not one cognitive universe, but 7,000, and we can create many more. Languages, of course, are living things, things that we can hone and change to suit our needs. The tragic thing is that we are losing so much of this linguistic diversity. We are losing one language a week, and by some estimates, half of the world's languages will be gone in the next 100 years. The even worse news is that right now, almost everything we know about the human mind and brain is based on studies conducted by and on university students, mostly Americans or English speakers. That excludes almost all humans, right? So what we know about the human mind is actually incredibly narrowed and biased, and science can do and has to do better. I want to leave you with this final thought. I've told you about how speakers of different languages think differently, but of course that's not about how people elsewhere think. It's about how you think. It's how the language that you speak shapes the way that you think. And that gives you the opportunity to ask, why do I think the way that I do? How could I think differently? And also, what thoughts do I wish to create? This is what we call linguistic relativity. And then, beauty is not in the diversity of worldviews,